You're watching the Men's Channel. Relationships between two committed adults break down all the time, but it is the children who suffer the most. Although young children will never miss out on the bickering, they will typically miss out on dad, especially if the child's mother is purposefully withholding visitation rights from the father. This, along with the psychological components, are what's referred to as parental alienation. Before the bloom falls off of a new relationship, everything seems beautiful and magical. Who would have imagined a short time earlier that two separate and distinct families could merge into one? That those families would collectively pull for the future parents of a relationship that would one day be dissolved by a selfish act called divorce. That one parent would see the children as their property, and because of this, partial out visitation rights to the father. Yes, the children's mother would not mind if every person on earth dealt with her children, just as long as it was not their biological father. There seems to be one vein that runs throughout most parental alienation cases, and that is that the ex-wife or girlfriend bears an extreme amount of animus for the child's father. Take the following case, for example, where Miss Lauren Lippy, who is the ex-wife to Mr. Ted Rubin, showed extreme bitterness for her husband until it destroyed their ability to co-parent together and destroyed her as a person. Now, Lippy, the upper middle class wife, had gotten so vengeful towards her husband that the judge who presided over their case withdrew her spousal support, child support, and her parental alienation rights for a time while he placed her in prison. The following is her husband's true nightmarish account as reported by Kieran Crowley, now, who tells us that the judge slapped Miss Lippy, a Long Island woman with a jail sentence for trying to drive a wedge between her ex-husband and their daughters, keeping them apart for weeks at a time and even claiming erroneously now that he had sexually groped one of his own girls. Now, Judge Robert Ross, who presided over the case, had this to say of many comments that he would have to say, and I quote, "Miss Lauren Lippy is a vengeful roadblock. She is the barbed wire standing in the way of her two daughters and their desperate dad," end quote. Lippy often went nuclear, launching foul-mouthed tirades at Ted Rubin in front of the girls, calling him a deadbeat, a loser, a scumbag, and a, quote, fucking asshole. Ross said Lippy, age 47, was a scheming manipulator who deliberately planned last-minute trips and events when her ex-husband was scheduled to visit with the girls. He was compelled to consent or risk disappointing the girls. So why? You see, Judge Ross wrote in his ruling, which found Lippy in contempt for violating the couple's joint custody agreement. If Rubin protested, Lippy berated him mercilessly. At one time, she told her husband, "We all hope you die from cancer." Now, this is in the court papers. And when she said this, both daughters were in her arms. Lippy even had the nerve to smirk in court when an emotional Rubin described the agony of missing out on Hanukkah with his own children. Judge Ross said Rubin was relegated to visit at the end of his ex-wife's driveway, where he lit a menorah with his daughters in his truck and watched them open presents for their grandparents. But the worst, Ross wrote, was crescendo of the plaintiff's conduct involving false accusations of sexual abuse. Lippy charged in 2008 that Mr. Rubin had fondled the breasts of one of his daughters. Lippy later conceded that she knew nothing sexual had occurred, so it was just flat-out lie. Now, to this presiding judge responded that the evidence before me demonstrates a pattern of willful and calculated violations of the clear and express dictates of the parties stipulations of the settlement. The judge was also annoyed that Lippy had punished the children for wanting to spend quality time with their own dad. Now, who would do this but a manipulative mom? And because of this, the judge Ross sentenced Lippy to 6 weekends in jail to be served on the first and third weekends of June, July, and August. So, consecutive months. Now, Lippy, who has since remarried, was scheduled to begin her jail time on that Friday after the court, but her sentence was stayed pending an appeal. Mr. Rubin is expected to take care of the children while Lippy is in lockdown in prison. Now, ironically, it was Lippy who asked the court to modify the custody agreement. Lippy declined to comment outside of her Lloyd Harbor home, but her lawyer Keith Reiger criticized the decision by saying it's extremely unusual, and in this case, it's inappropriate. So he was for her 100%. And Reiger said he chose to believe the husband and not her. Her lawyer was shocked. Of course she's upset, he says, but she's also worried about her children. She's worried that if she goes to jail, how will it affect the children? I say she should have thought about that long before. Now, Mr. Rubin, aged 52 years, a marketing executive, declined to comment, but had sounded off about this dilemma on his internet blog. He had this to say, and I quote, "Spending time with my girls is something I put before all else. They are teenagers now, and being a divorced dad, it can be challenging to continue to reach out, put them first, and maintain this in the face of their occasional lack of interest and the roadblocks so easily put in place by their mom." Now, in a separate later interview, Ted Rubin, the father, said over the years that his ex-wife had been vengefully programming his children to hate him. It's a case of parental alienation that isn't being taken lightly. Now, Lippy is going to jail. Rubin said his once loving relationship with his children is now sadly described very simply as torturous, he said. Rubin said after he divorced Lippy in 2003, he believes his ex-wife brainwashed their daughters. It's drilled into their head day in and day out. You're not allowed to love daddy, he said. You're not allowed to have a good time with daddy. He recounts how he had to do Hanukkah gifts at the end of the driveway, like I said before, in the back of my truck, Rubin said. It was freezing cold out that day. They wouldn't even get into my truck to open their gifts for me and their grandparents because they were told by their mom I would drive away with them. It was incidents like that that led to her prison sentence. Now, child psychologist Dr. Susan Bartell said the sentence will send a strong message to parents and mothers, but the Rubin's children will be struggling for a lifetime. I think the healing for parental alienation syndrome can take forever. Actually, and many never fully occur and will impact on the children for a lifetime. Now, Dr. Bartell said this. The girl's father said, "I'm assured by people who know about these things that my daughters will come back to me one day. But I'll never make up for all the missed time. It's never going to come back," Rubin said. Now, proving a parental alienation case is never really easy. But if you can document it as this one father did, you have a chance of winning your case. Here are the actual case facts in which his wife was tried and accused. The specific findings of the facts are detailed in what I'm about to tell you. Now, it is clear that her conduct was calculated and did in fact impair, impede, or prejudice the rights and remedies of her husband. Now, it says that the wife intentionally scheduled their child, and she has to be known as N. Can't call her name. She scheduled N's birthday party on a Sunday afternoon during her husband's weekend visitations, and then refused to permit her husband to attend. She demanded that N be returned home early in order to prepare for her party, but her sister D, the other child, was enjoying the time with her father and wished to remain with him until the party began. Now, the mother castigated N for daring to invite her father to take a picture of her outside of the party. Now, according to the mother, this doesn't work for me, she said, and she threatened to cancel N's party and warned her that her sister too will be punished big time for wanting to spend time with their own father. Now, the mother tapes temper tantrum offered into evidence vividly detailed one instance of how D and N, the two girls, had been made to understand that enjoying the time with their father will be met with their mother's wrath and threat of punishment. So you threaten your own daughters for being with their own father. Now, the mother conceded that when she completed N's registration card for her school in a separate incident, she wrote that the girl's father is not authorized to take them from school. She wrote, "I have custody. Please call me," she said, if they try to be taken by the father. At trial, she claimed to fear that her husband would retrieve the girls directly from school. However, she later admitted that her husband had never attempted to pick them up from school to start with. Her testimony at trial sharply contradicted her sworn affidavit dated January 23rd of that year, in which she stated that he constantly attempted to pick the girls up unaccompanied from their school and activities, which disrupts not only the girls, but those in charge of the aforementioned. In her sworn affidavit, she claimed that she completed the registration card because her husband sought to attend the end of D's art class and then had the audacity to drive his daughter home. The art class incident occurred well after the registration card was completed by the mother. Moreover, nothing in the parties' agreement prohibits the father from visiting the children at extracurricular activities or from driving them to and from those events. In point of fact, there was no dispute that D's Friday art class in Huntington ended as the father's alternative weekend visitation commenced. So it's all a ruse on the mother's part. And his ex-wife wrote to the principal and Mr. T, N's 5th grade teacher, demanding that they restrict their conversation with the father to N's academics, as the mother is solely responsible for academic progress and emotional well-being, which was a lie. Now, notwithstanding the nature of the joint legal custody, the mother insisted before me, the school administrator, that I have custody and he has visitation. This was a lie as well. Additionally, the mother completed an application for admission to the school on behalf of N in October of that year. On the application, she checked the box, "Mother has custody," rather than a box directly below which says joint custody. Another lie. Now, she identified her new husband, which she had, RL, as N's parent or guardian, and she failed to mention the actual father, which is weird. Now, during the cross-examination in court, the mother insisted that she only omitted reference to her ex-husband for fear that his financial circumstances would adversely impact her daughter's chances of acceptance to that school. Now, however, no financial information was requested anywhere on the application. Moreover, the mother acknowledged that none was required until after the applicant was invited to attend. Now, by applying to this particular school without the father's express knowledge, but with the N completely involved in the process, the mother orchestrated the decision to be made as well as an alienation of the child from the father. Had the father not consented to N's attendance at the school after the fact, N would be angry with him for purportedly interfering with the enrollment, even if the father's objections to the private school placement were sound. Now, if no event was consulted as to education decision, this was wrong. When asked how she might handle things differently now, the mother did not indicate that she would first discuss the possibility of a private school with the child's biological father, as she is obligated to do so pursuant to the stipulation. So this was a very angry, vindictive mother. Now, in a similar pattern of being advised after the fact, the father testified that there were countless times when his ex-wife deliberately scheduled theater tickets, family events, and social activities for the girls during his visitation, and he was compelled to consent or risk disappointing the girls. Now, these occurrences continued even during the time span of proceeding before the judge. The mother was forced to concede at trial that the father was prevented from enjoying his visitation rights after he returned with the girls from his niece's bar mitzvah, until this court granted father's emergency application to compel the mother to allow the father to take D and N for the ski trip he had scheduled for his half of the Christmas recess. She was very vindictive. Now, the mother insisted that it was D and N who would refuse to see the father, not her decision, because they were angry with the choices he had made on their behalf, including his objections to N attending the new school the mother chose. Now, the father was made aware of the children's position because of their parroted viewpoint of the mother. Now, many times when they visited the house, they seemed to speak from a script that she had prepared. So, if you are in these situations where you have a very vindictive mother in a parental alienation cases, I suggest that you write down and document everything that's being done to you. So the mother in this case, she had a what I say goes attitude. And in a lot of these cases where there's parental alienation, and the mother is teaching the daughters and the sons what to do when facing their children, these things occur. So don't fall for that. Don't go for that. Don't do it in a defensive posture. Just document it. Get yourself an attorney. Stand up for your rights. Don't just roll over and lay down. For the Men's Channel, this is Charles Rivers. We'll see you next time on Parental Alienation. Thank you.